Hey everyone, if you're like me and fascinated by how things work, today's deep dive is going to be right up your alley.
Oh, I agree. And I think we picked a really interesting one.
We're getting into the nitty-gritty of the LPG retail business in Kenya. Those gas cylinders.
Yeah, the stuff of everyday life, but we rarely stop to think about the whole ecosystem behind them.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into. We found this awesome YouTube video from Siblix DigiTV that breaks it all down.
It's a great overview of the industry, especially for anyone who's, curious about how it all
Okay,
works.
so full disclosure, I had no idea how dynamic this market is until I watched this video.
Right. It's not just about buying and selling cylinders. There are all these layers.
Yeah. Like, did you know there was a whole gas cylinder revolution back in 2009?
Oh, yeah, the universal valve mandate. That was a big turning point, a real game changer.
Okay, back up a sec. What was happening before this so-called revolution?
Imagine a world where every single oil company had its own unique valve system for their cylinders.
Oh, wow. So you could only refill a total cylinder at a total station.
Exactly. Shell at Shell and so on. It was a huge monopoly for the big companies, making LPG less accessible and probably more expensive.
Okay, so 2009 rolls around and the government says, enough with the proprietary valves. Everybody uses the same one, like a universal adapter.
Well, not an adapter, but a standardized valve that all cylinders had to have. This broke the oil company's stronghold and theoretically was supposed to open up the market and make LPG more affordable for the everyday Kenyan.
Okay, that sounds like a win for the people, but I sense a but coming.
You know it. There were unintended consequences. This shift, even though it was well-intentioned, led to a big increase in what's called cross-filling.
Crock filling, is that like mixing different types of gas? Sounds kind of dangerous.
It's not about mixing the gas itself, but more about refilling any brand of cylinder without, authorization.
So like taking your Shell cylinder to some random shop and having it filled with who knows what LPG.
Exactly. And it's illegal, by the way.
Yeah, that sounds like a safety hazard waiting to happen.
Absolutely. While it might seem like a way for smaller players to get a leg up, cross-filling creates these massive safety concerns. You could be putting your home and family at risk because the cylinder might not meet the proper safety standards.
Right, like who knows what kind of pressure it can handle or if there are any leaks.
Not to mention, it fuels a whole black market, making it super hard to track the actual LPG consumption in Kenya.
So this revolution kind of backfired a bit. Okay, let's say I want to get into this LPG business legally. What does that look like?
Think of it like navigating a maze with a few unexpected loopholes.
Sounds exciting.
In an ideal world, you'd need a bunch of licenses.
Yeah.
An ERC license from the Energy Regulatory Commission, a fire license, the usual business permits, and a weights and measures certification to make sure your scales are accurate.
Okay, so it's not just about setting up shop and selling. There's actual paperwork involved.
Right. And that's just on paper. The reality on the ground can be a different story.
Here comes that, but again, I can feel it.
You got it. Enforcement is the issue. Many retailers, especially those outside the big cities, might only have a basic business permit.
So they skip the fire license and the ERC license.
Yeah, they operate in this risky but potentially more profitable gray area.
It's a gamble. They save time and money up front, but risk serious penalties later on. Why do they do it?
It's a mix of things. Some folks might not know the regulations, others see it as a cost-cutting measure because the market is so competitive. And getting those licenses can be expensive and time-consuming, especially for smaller retailers.
Right. If you're starting out small, every shilling counts. It's a tough call for them. Okay, so let's say our aspiring LPG retailer has either navigated the maze or taken a shortcut. They need the cylinders now. How does that work?
Well, there are a few ways to go about it. The most straightforward is to buy brand new, pre-filled cylinders directly from petrol stations or supermarkets.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that must be the pricier option.
It is. You're paying for that quality assurance and peace of mind.
So I'm guessing most retailers, especially those starting out, don't go that route.
You're right. There's a huge secondhand market for cylinders in Kenya.
Secondhand cylinders. Now that's interesting. Where do they all come from?
Think about it. People move, they switch to other energy sources, or maybe they have an extra cylinder lying around.
Makes sense.
Okay.
It creates a ready supply of empty cylinders that can be, refurbished and put back into circulation.
Exactly. You've got this whole network of cylinder brokers and dealers operating in the background, connecting those who have cylinders with those who need them.
It's like a hidden ecosystem within the LPG market.
It is. And this brings us to a fascinating concept called cylinder float.
Cylinder float. Sounds more like a pool party than a business term.
It's a pretty insightful metric. Cylinder fleet refers to the fact that in Kenya, there are more LPG cylinders that have been issued than are actually being used at any given time.
Wait, really? More cylinders out there than people actually using. That's interesting. What does that tell us about the market?
Well, it suggests a few things. People might be holding onto their cylinders even if they're not using them right now, maybe hoping to go back to LPG when their finances improve.
Like it's a backup option if things get tough.
Right. Or they might have multiple cylinders and switch between them based on price fluctuations or availability.
It's like their own little gas cylinder savings account.
Yeah.
Okay, so our aspiring retailer has their licenses, hopefully. They've got their cylinders maybe new, maybe pre-loved. Now they need the actual gas. Where does that come from?
We can divide LPG suppliers into two categories. The legal players and the, let's say, less than legal ones.
It's like choosing your character at the start of a video game. One path is safe, the other is risky.
I like that analogy. So on the legal side, you have the big oil companies and the licensed wholesalers. They follow all the rules, have the proper safety standards, and pay their taxes.
And the less than legal ones, are we talking about smugglers, back alley refills?
Pretty much. They often offer lower prices, which can be tempting for retailers trying to maximize profit. But, as we said before, this path comes with risks both for safety and for legal reasons.
Yeah, you never know what you're getting with those guys. It's a real ethical dilemma for retailers, trying to make a living while keeping their customers safe and operating within the law. Not an easy balance.
Not at all. And all of this is happening in the context of super fierce competition in the Kenyan LPG market.
It's a battle out there.
Yeah.
So many players vying for customers. What does a retailer need to do to stand out?
Think of it as a multi-level game of strategy. First, location is key. You need to be where your customers are. But it's more than just being in the right spot. You need to be reliable.
So consistent supply, right? People knowing they can depend on you to have gas when they need it.
Exactly. No shady business, no shortchanging customers, just consistent, honest service. And then there's branding, which might seem surprising.
Branding for an LPG retailer.
You'd be surprised how much it matters. Even something as simple as a catchy business name or a clean storefront can make a huge difference.
Makes sense. You want to stand out from the crowd, make a good impression.
Exactly. And a friendly, helpful staff goes a long way too. It's all about creating a positive customer experience.
I bet there are some retailers out there who are getting really creative with their marketing.
Oh, absolutely. Some offer loyalty programs where customers earn points with each purchase. Others send text reminders when it's time for a refill. It's about building those relationships and keeping customers coming back.
Wow, so much more to it than I ever realized. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks here. How profitable is this LPG retail business?
That's the million-dollar question. Profit margins can be a moving target. They're affected by your supplier, the market as a whole, and even the time of the month.
Hold it. The time of the month affects profits. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Isn't it interesting? Sales tend to spike towards the end of the month when people get paid.
Payday refills, people stocking up on essentials like cooking gas. It's like a little economic cycle within the LPG market.
Exactly. These nuances make it so fascinating. But to answer your question about profitability, it really depends on a bunch of factors. On average, a retailer can expect a margin of about 10% to 20% per kilogram of LPG sold.
So if you're selling a standard 6-kilogram cylinder, you're looking at a profit of, what, 60 to 120 shillings?
Roughly, yeah. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but it can add up over time. The more cylinders you sell, the higher your revenue.
But you also have to factor in operating costs. Rent, staff salaries, transportation, all that.
Absolutely. And those costs can vary wildly depending on your location and how you run your business. On average, it takes about 8 months for an LPG retail business in Kenya to break even.
8 months? That's a pretty long time to operate without turning a profit. Really highlights the need for careful planning and managing expenses wisely.
Couldn't agree more. It's not a business you jump into lightly. You need to be smart, strategic, and understand the market dynamics.
It's about more than just buying and selling cylinders. It's about understanding the rhythm of the Kenyan economy, people's habits, everything.
Right. And speaking of habits, there's one aspect of this business that often gets overlooked: the human element.
A human element. Okay, I'm all ears.
We've talked about regulations, suppliers, profit margins, but at the end of the day, this business is about people.
It's easy to get caught up in the numbers and forget that. Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing that's particularly interesting is that women make up the majority of LPG consumers in Kenya.
That makes sense. They're often the ones doing the cooking, managing the household budget.
And they tend to be a lot more discerning about quality and service when it comes to LPG.
So if you want to succeed in this business, you need to cater to women. Make sure they're happy.
Absolutely. Women are much more likely to check the weight of the cylinder, make sure it's in good condition, ask questions about the refilling process.
They're not just buying gas. They're actively involved. They want to know what they're getting.
Precisely. And they're also more likely to tell others about their experiences, both good and bad. That word of mouth can really make or break a retailer's reputation.
So it's not just about the transaction. It's about building trust, providing a good experience, and understanding what your customers, especially women, value.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in a business like selling cooking gas, the human element is crucial. So we were talking about how women are really the key decision makers when it comes to LPG in Kenya.
Yeah, they're not just passively buying gas.
Yeah,
They're really scrutinizing the quality and service.
absolutely. You got to think about it. For a lot of households, LPG is a major expense.
Right, it's not just about the price per kilogram, but like making that cylinder last.
Exactly. And women are often the ones managing those household budgets,
Yeah.
making sure things stretch.
So retailers who get that, who really cater to those needs, they've got a leg up.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But beyond location and reliability and all that, what are some of the tactics retailers are using?
To actually attract customers and keep them coming back.
Yeah, like what are they doing to stand out?
I'm curious.
Well, some are getting pretty creative.
Oh,
I came across this retailer in Nairobi who's partnered with a mobile money provider.
interesting.
They've got this loyalty program, so customers earn points for every purchase they make using mobile money.
Smart. Tapping into that mobile money trend.
Right, and then they can redeem those points for discounts on refills or even household goods.
So it encourages them to keep coming back, and I bet it helps the retailer track customer data too.
Exactly, it's a win-win.
So loyalty programs, what else?
Others are all about convenience. They've set up these online ordering platforms.
So people can schedule deliveries or request refills without even leaving the house.
Precisely, it's perfect for busy households or, if transportation is an issue.
Makes life so much easier.
It really does. And some are even offering free delivery cylinder safety checks installation services.
Wow, it's becoming a full-service experience.
It is, the competition's really pushing retailers to up their game.
It's great for customers.
It is for sure. But let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
What about the environmental side of things?
Yeah, LPG is supposed to be cleaner than charcoal or firewood.
Right.
But is it really that simple?
It's a good question. And it's true that LPG burns a lot cleaner.
Less smoke, less pollution.
Right. Fewer harmful emissions. And that means better indoor air quality, which is huge.
Especially for women and children spending a lot of time cooking inside.
Right.
Less respiratory problems, healthier lungs.
Exactly. It's a big win for families, but the overall picture is a little more complicated.
How so?
Well, while LPG burns clean the process of getting it, the extraction, the processing, the transportation,
Yeah, that stuff takes energy.
it does generate some greenhouse gas emissions.
So it's not totally emissions-free.
No, it's not a perfect solution, but it's still a lot better than those traditional biomass fuels.
Especially when you think of all the deforestation that goes into charcoal production.
Right, so it's a trade-off, but one that leans in favor of LPG, I'd say.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the cylinders themselves? They're made of metal, right?
Good point. The production of the cylinders does have an environmental impact.
Mining the metal, manufacturing them.
Yeah, but those cylinders are designed to be refilled and reused over and over again.
So that initial impact is spread out over time,
Exactly. It's a more circular system.
which is always good. But are there efforts to make the cylinders themselves more sustainable?
Definitely some manufacturers are looking into using recycled materials.
That would be great.
It would make a big difference. So the industry is starting to address those concerns.
That's good to hear. Okay, but let's zoom back out to the bigger picture.
Sounds good.
How does this whole LPG retail sector contribute to the Kenyan economy as a whole?
Oh, it plays a huge role.
How so?
Well, first off, it creates jobs not just for retailers, but for everyone involved, transportation, distribution, manufacturing, maintenance.
Wow, it's a whole chain.
It supports livelihoods all over the country. And as more Kenyans switch to LPG, it reduces reliance on imported fuels like kerosene.
So it saves the country money.
Exactly. A boost on both the micro and macro levels.
That's awesome. Okay, but let's zoom back in to the individual retailer.
All right.
We talked about licensing and suppliers and competition.
Right. All those challenges.
But what about just the day-to-day of running an LPG business? What does that actually look like?
It's a hands-on business for sure.
I bet.
A typical day might start with receiving deliveries from the supplier, checking inventory.
Got to make sure you've got enough gas to meet demand.
Exactly. Can't run out.
Hmm.
Then you've got customer interactions, processing sales, handling payments, maybe even delivering cylinders.
Yeah, lugging those things around can't be easy.
It's definitely a physically demanding job. And then there's the whole marketing side of things, too.
Right. Got to keep those customers coming back.
Exactly. It might involve putting up flyers, running ads, partnering with community groups.
It's about being part of the community.
It really is. So running a successful LPG business in Kenya takes a lot of different skills.
You've got to be a business person, a customer service was a logistics expert, a bit of a marketer,
It's a lot to juggle.
but rewarding, I'm sure.
It is, for sure. But we haven't really touched on one crucial aspect yet.
Which is,
Safety.
yes, of course, we talked about cross-filling and dodgy suppliers.
Right. But what about the actual handling and storage of these cylinders? There's a lot that can go wrong.
Yeah, if things aren't done properly, it could be really dangerous.
Absolutely. LPG is highly flammable. It's not something to mess around with.
So, what are retailers doing to stay safe?
Well, they need to be trained in proper cylinder handling, like how to transport them, how to store them, how to connect and disconnect them safely.
It's not just about their own safety either.
Nope, it's about protecting their customers, the whole community.
So, there are regulations in place to make sure things are done right.
There are, and retailers need to follow them to the letter. Things like proper ventilation, keeping cylinders away from heat sources, making sure there are no leaks.
Sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is, but it goes beyond just following the rules. It's about creating a culture of safety.
What do you mean by that?
It's about being proactive,
Mm.
regularly inspecting those cylinders for damage, training staff in what to do in an emergency, identifying potential hazards before they become a problem.
It's about taking safety seriously.
Exactly, making it a top priority. But even with the best practices, accidents can still happen.
That's true. So, what are some of the most common safety concerns, and how can retailers mitigate those risks?
Well, one of the biggest ones is leaks.
Makes sense.
They can happen because of a damaged valve, a faulty connection, even just wear and tear on the cylinder.
So, what can you do about that?
Well, you need systems in place to detect those leaks early on.
Like what?
You can use a soap solution to check for bubbles or install gas detectors in the storage area.
So you can catch it before it becomes a bigger problem.
Exactly. Another concern is improper handling during transportation.
Right. Got to be careful with those things.
Cylinders should always be transported upright and secured so they don't roll around or fall over.
Yeah, you don't want those things bouncing around in the back of a truck,
Definitely not. And then, of course, there's the risk of fire.
which could be caused by a leak or a spark or...
All sorts of things. Yeah, so retailers need to have fire extinguishers on hand, and they need to know how to use them.
Be prepared for anything.
Exactly. And educating customers about safe LPG use is crucial too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Retailers should provide clear instructions on how to connect and disconnect the cylinder safely, how to check for leaks, what to do in case of an emergency.
It's a partnership. The retailer and the customer both need to play their part.
Exactly. It's about creating that culture of safety all the way down the line. But beyond all these practical safety measures, there's also the question of insurance.
Ah, yes. In a business like this, insurance is crucial.
It is. You're dealing with a potentially hazardous product. You need to be protected.
So what kind of insurance are we talking about?
Well, public liability insurance is a must-have.
What did that cover?
It protects the retailer if someone gets injured or their property is damaged as a result of the business operations.
So if there's an accident and someone gets hurt, the retailer's covered.
Exactly. It provides peace of mind and protects them from a potential financial disaster.
Makes sense. What else?
In addition to that, they might also want product liability insurance.
What's that?
That covers the retailer if there's a problem with the LPG itself.
Yeah.
Like if a cylinder malfunctions and causes an explosion.
So it's protection against faulty products.
Right, and depending on the size of their business, they might also want property insurance to cover their shop and equipment.
So fire theft, natural disasters, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's all about having a comprehensive plan that covers all the bases.
It's just smart business practice.
It is for sure. This deep dive into the world of Kenyan LPG has been fascinating.
It really has. I had no idea how much went into it.
It's a complex industry with so many different facets.
But we've covered a lot. We've looked at the challenges and opportunities for retailers, the importance of safety and consumer relationships.
It's a microcosm of the Kenyan economy, really.
It is. But before we wrap up this part, I got one more question.
Okay, shoot.
Is there still room for growth in this market? Like with all the competition, Is there space for new players?
That's a great question, and the answer is a resounding yes.
Really?
Oh, yeah. LPG penetration in Kenya is still relatively low compared to other countries in the region.
So there are still a lot of people using charcoal or firewood.
Exactly. And as the Kenyan economy grows and more people move to the cities, the demand for LPG is just going to increase.
That's encouraging for anyone looking to get into the business.
It is, but what advice would you give to someone starting out?
That's a tough one.
Well, the first thing is do your research, really understand the market, the regulations, the competition, who your customers are.
Lay that groundwork.
Exactly. Have a solid business plan to outline your goals, your pricing, your marketing, how you're going to manage your finances.
A roadmap for success.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of relationships. Connect with reputable suppliers network with other retailers. Get involved in your community.
It's about building trust and goodwill.
It is. And finally, never compromise on safety. Invest in proper training equipment insurance.
Safety first, always.
Exactly. With careful planning, a dedication to excellence, and a focus on safety, the Kenyan LPG market is full of potential.
That's a great message to end on. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Kenya's LPG scene.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey exploring this world.
We've uncovered so much already, from the nitty-gritty of regulations to the day-to-day grind of running an LPG business.
We even talked about the environmental side of things and the importance of safety.
Yeah, all those crucial aspects. But now I'm curious about the future. What's next for this industry?
Well, one thing that's really gaining momentum is the whole smart technology thing.
Ooh, like those RFID tag cylinders we talked about.
Yeah, those. And online ordering platforms, but it goes way beyond that.
I'm all ears. What kind of tech are we talking about here?
Imagine sensors and cylinders that can actually monitor the gas levels.
Okay, so they tell you when you're running low.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they can even send an alert to the customer like, hey, time for a refill.
No more running out of gas mid-cooking.
Oh.
That's genius.
That's all about convenience, right? And those sensors can also send data back to the retailers.
So they can track consumption patterns, manage inventory better.
You got it. It's a win-win for both sides.
Speaking of wins, we talked about mobile money being huge in Kenya. Any other cool payment innovations popping up?
Oh, yeah. Pay-as-you-go systems are emerging.
Pay as you go, like for LPG.
Yep.
Yeah.
Instead of buying a full cylinder up front, you can buy smaller amounts of gas as you need it.
That's a game changer for affordability, especially for folks who might not have a lot of cash up front.
Exactly. It makes it way more accessible.
Love it. So tech is helping with convenience, affordability. What about sustainability? Any innovations on that front?
Absolutely. There's a lot of buzz around bio-LPG.
Bio-LPG, as in organic.
Yep. Renewable LPG made from things like waste biomass or even algae.
So instead of fossil fuels, we could be cooking with gas made from, seaweed.
Pretty much. It has the potential to drastically reduce the industry's carbon footprint.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But are there any hurdles to overcome with all this cool tech?
Of course. Cost is always a factor. Smart cylinders, pay-as-you-go systems, bio-LPG production, they all require a bit of investment up front.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially for smaller retailers, that initial cost can be a barrier.
And then there's the infrastructure piece. You need things like reliable internet, good mobile money coverage, a solid distribution network.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the whole ecosystem around it.
Exactly. And government policies play a role too. They need to create a space where innovation can thrive.
Yeah, incentivize businesses to adopt more sustainable practices. Okay, so tech is a big trend, but are there any other interesting shifts happening in Kenya's LPG sector?
One that's caught my eye is the rise of cylinder leasing programs.
Leasing. As in, you don't buy the cylinder, you just rent it.
Yep. You pay a monthly fee to a specialized company, and they handle everything.
So no big upfront cost for the customer.
Right. It makes it much more manageable, especially for people who might be hesitant to invest in a cylinder outright.
Plus, it probably comes with perks, right? Like maintenance and stuff.
Often, yeah. They might include maintenance, damage coverage, even doorstep delivery.
That's pretty convenient.
It is. And it also takes care of the safety aspect since those leasing companies usually maintain their cylinders really well.
So it's good for everyone. Okay, with all this happening, what do you think the Kenyan LPG scene will look like in, say, 5 to 10 years? Crystal ball time.
It's tough to predict the future, but I think we'll see a much more diverse market.
Diverse in what way?
more tech-driven for sure.
Hmm.
Smart tech, renewable energy sources, and innovative business models like those leasing programs.
Sounds exciting. So what are the key takeaways for our listeners today?
The Kenyan LPG market is a dynamic place, full of potential. It's being shaped by consumer demand and new technologies.
It's a microcosm of the global energy transition,
It
really.
is.
Yeah.
And for anyone looking to jump in, the key is understanding your customers, embracing those new technologies, and always prioritizing safety and sustainability.
Be adaptable, be innovative, and put the customer first.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Kenyan LPG retail business. What a journey.
It has been. Hopefully, our listeners learned a lot and maybe even got inspired.
We've explored the challenges, the opportunities, the future. It's a fascinating story still unfolding.
And who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be part of shaping that future.
That's the beauty of it all. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those questions.